Share my screen.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Start sharing and then I'll start the show here. Oh, came to the wrong. Hard to predict which screen you're going to actually see the show on. There we go. No, it's coming to the wrong one. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and share the other screen instead. Yeah. Okay, you see the full screen version? I hope.
You look good. Everything looks fine.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, so yeah, the title of our presentation is Embracing Open Educational Resources in Sociology. And it's a case study of our department here at SUNY Oneonta adopting an open education textbook, OER textbook by OpenStax. And I'll be discussing some of the journey that we went on as a department. And what that journey entailed was first identifying a good contender. And we did review a few of the available open education textbooks in sociology. And we really like the third edition of OpenStax. So that's what we chose and adopted. And we also committed to creating a customized course shell and Brightspace, which would have direct links to specific readings out of that. We developed a library of supplemental resources and materials. And that, of course, we have to assess everything. That's part of our lives as educators. So we collected student and instructor feedback to see what they thought about the book and the shell that we developed, as well as the resources. We did receive support from the SUNY OER Impact Grant, so I'd like to recognize and thank SUNY for the support. And the encouragement did motivate the faculty to be involved in this project and helped us transition to the new textbook, which we have done department-wide now at this point. You'll see some of what we'll present today was at a transitionary stage where some of the courses sections had adopted it and some had not, which gave us a quasi-experimental comparison. I'll show you some of the results of that towards the end of this presentation. There's the 2023 is when we got it. So that was the website for that. And we're particularly interested in this because we knew, at least in a general way, that OER could potentially save students a little bit of money, at least. You know, they have lots of courses. The fewer of those that have expensive textbooks, the better. It's a high cost. A lot of students who are receiving aid in tuition can't always cover their textbooks on top of that. So I think in principle, our department just sort of liked the idea of providing a free or cheap alternative to traditional textbooks. We also came to really appreciate some of the flexibility of the OER offering, meaning that instead of just going linearly through a textbook, we could pick and choose readings, order them in a way that made sense to us. OpenStax and most OER textbooks allow you to write. We did not write novel material. We didn't feel it was necessary, but that is an option that did interest us. We may pursue that in the future, adding additional content to some of the topics. So I think, of course, it aligns with the principles of open education, promoting accessibility. Equity is part of that. Of course, students who are having a harder time financially sometimes have to make the difficult decision about whether or not to even buy their textbooks. We have some evidence that maybe some students were not buying their textbooks in some of the non-OER sections. So this was a collaborative effort. My team members, Lizzie Seal, Alex Thomas, Brian Lowe, Johan Leon, Lisa Kirch, and myself. We were all involved in this project, so I'd like to recognize their contributions. And their joint efforts ensured that we could have a high quality course shell and supporting materials, and that everybody had buy-in, and it came to the adoption. Essentially, everybody who teaches the intro sections for our department. And we essentially broke ourselves off into teams. Some of us focused on the supplemental material development, some of us on the core shell development, and some of us on the assessment side of things. Was a SEAL particularly is helpful in that regard. We estimated that potential savings based on the most popular textbook after talking to some of the current instructors. That textbook was going for about $111.84 per book. Fall 23 to spring 24, so annual enrollment with around 426 students because Intro to Sociology is a pretty popular gen ed course. So we get a fair number of students. That's actually down. We were up higher before COVID. So the cost impact has been much greater in the past. But even just in that 1 year, $47,643 worth of savings. So the lump sum is impressive, but what's more impressive is just the individual student, of course, who that $111 is, maybe a choice between that or groceries for the week. That's something we wanted to be cognizant of in this project. One of the things we really liked about the adoption of the OpenStax textbook, and I apologize, that's a little bit small, but we liked that we could embed the text directly into the shell. So when students came to a new topic in the Brightspace shell, they could click on the readings, and then they would see this screen, and then they would see, exactly which readings to do. They could click on it, and they'd be reading it right there on the spot, making it very convenient. And I think we have evidence, as we'll get to later, that providing that evidence increased the proportion of students who are actually reading, which, of course, every professor wants to believe is happening. Doesn't always happen. Charging students a lot of money for a book, making them look things up in an inconvenient fashion. These are all ways of decreasing the odds of actually reading the assigned text. So if you look at it that way, this really does help quite a bit with the probability of getting those readings done. So just to run through on some of the benefits that we perceived as a team, obviously the free accessibility of the OER texts. They can be accessed online. I showed you how we embedded it in the shell, but we do also make a PDF available to the students, and we provide them with a link to the website where the text lives. So they don't have to go through those embedded links, even though that's probably the most convenient way. But we did find that some prefer to just have the PDF document that they could just go through the assigned readings within that. Scalability, we can easily distribute new text, like the updates to the OER text can be implemented on the fly. You don't have to wait for a new expensive edition to come out, so it can stay up to date without any difficult iteration or cost to students. The augmentation of class materials, enhancement of regular course content, these are all important things. Because you can put the videos and the graphics right there next to the reading, or if you wanted to edit the book, which I mentioned as an option, we didn't pursue, but we could embed links to videos and graphics there. And in fact, the textbook does have some such links in place. Quick circulation, it doesn't get more easy or quick than a click of a mouse and opening up a reading, or somebody could be using a touch screen like a tablet and easily just click on the link and be reading instantly. So there's the ease and convenience, showcasing innovation and talents. Again, we didn't write for it, but some of us are experts in some of the topics that are covered in the intro book and have ambitions to develop original content to add to the text. So we want to contribute to that OpenStax project. I mentioned the cost savings and the customization. I also mentioned the flexibility, being able to order the readings in such a way that makes sense to the department. And in fact, that was another motivation for our department, was the traditional layout of chapters in the intro book didn't carefully reflect our department's expertise. Namely, a lot of times the material in the final chapter, urbanization, globalization, global stratification, all these kinds of macro issues are often dealt with sort of at the end of the class, but we wanted to move that up. So we actually reordered things a bit, and the OER textbook allowed us to do that. So that was a nice benefit. So now I'm going to run through some of the student feedback and their responses to this adoption of OER. textbook in our classroom. This one, how often did you use the student resources? So those were the supplemental resources that we provide them with. And of course, we'd like to think our students are studying every day, and it might be a little bit ambitious, but we were satisfied that the majority of them said, frequently or daily, or at least once or twice a week, and that very few of them were not accessing the student resources on a regular basis. Of course, that's going to be linked to student success in the classroom. Strategies for studying. We were happy to see that reading the textbook came through with flying colors. I think just making it so easily accessible. As I mentioned, it was their perception that, that was one of the primary strategies for studying. And how helpful in learning about sociology was the OpenStax textbook. So that was more about our selection. And he said pretty favorable. 12 of the subsample who answered these questions were very favorable on it. Another 11 fairly, and then only a small minority said somewhat or not helpful. So most students were perceiving it as a very helpful and quality textbook. That's often a concern. A lot of the people who resist adopting OER often say, well, it's just not as good as the alternative. Well, we have evidence that suggests otherwise. I think that's pretty solid evidence that students perceive quality in the text. Then this question, how much is your interest in the field of sociology increased by the course materials, including the text? And, some, and to very much, some was the modal category. Hard to account for tastes. We hope that everybody will love and want to become a sociology major, but since it is a gen ed course, you have to realize it's not just majors who are taking that. So some is still very good, we think. And then, of course, a good quarter of them or so said very much. And then the rest was how did you access the book? Again, I mentioned some did prefer the PDF. The majority did go directly through those easy links embedded in the Brightspace shell. So if anybody is considering adopting an OER and using it and you use a shell format, an LMS system, then we do definitely recommend making it as easy as possible by providing those direct links to the readings shell. Our shell is freely available. Or can be made freely available if it's not. So that's something we're more than willing to provide if anybody's interested. Some people went to the website. About an equal number actually went directly to the website, but most were using those direct links. So then we asked, when you have a question about course content, what resources did you use most often? Again, they went to the shell, they went to the textbook to answer the questions they had. Some, just knee-jerk reaction will Google answers. One even admitted using Quizlet, which we appreciated the honesty there. That is something that is a factor for people teaching online courses. And then does your access to technology or internet impact your ability to complete assignments? About half said never, but access to technology and the internet was a factor for a sizable, almost a third of our students. So it's something to keep in mind, especially if you're teaching an online course on a compressed schedule, say a 3 to 5 week course or something like that, that can really get in the way, something to be cognizant about. Since everything is digital, it's something to keep an eye on. And then what do you see as the benefits of being assigned an OER textbook? So these are some open-ended free responses, which we've categorized by theme. And one of those themes was maybe, as you'd expect, cost and ease of access. So these are some of the direct quotes we got about the easy access, the fact that it's a cheaper alternative, didn't have to spend a lot of money, more people have access, it's free and accessible, so just more of the same, more or less, as you go down. You did not have to pay for a textbook. People definitely appreciate that. The other theme, navigation and information access. Students liked how easy it was to navigate the textbook, and the benefits of being assigned OER for this course. I can always go back and check my answers from the reading. and I know exactly where to look for each topic. It's all right there. This person really revealed their costs for a semester. So somebody paying $500 a semester for textbooks is going to appreciate, if they're taking $100 off of that, about a 20% reduction in terms of their costs. And $500 is starting to approach what looks more like rent than textbook costs. So this person liked the linear structure to the class and the fact that you could review the book. Yes, you can do that with a traditional book, but I think this speaks to the ease of access. Again, going to the quality of the book, a lot of students said they found it a very useful book. And so that was another theme that emerged from the pre-responses. Helped me further understand the concepts. Text was extremely detailed and geared toward my course. Great current event example in the textbook. So again, all the things when I hear professors and faculty say, nah, I don't want to do OER because it tends to be outdated or lower quality. We're just not seeing that. We're seeing a lot of evidence that in fact, the students are seeing quality in this particular OER textbook at least. I'm sure there's variability, so that may be true sometimes. But with the OpenStax third edition intro book, we see quality evidence throughout these comments. What are the disadvantages? Have to be fair. Of course, we don't want to just cheerlead this. So what were the disadvantages that students perceived using the OER textbook? And this is something, reading on a screen can be a struggle. And it is worth pointing out that the OpenStax and most OER textbooks can be assigned in a physical format. So if people are dealing with eye strain, or maybe they have a preference for a physical copy, maybe they have a vision disability, but the advantage of online is you can work with the on-screen ability enhancing software if you don't get with the physical book. So in some ways it makes it more accessible if people are dealing with vision disabilities or something like that. But some people just didn't like the strain or the difficulty of reading on a widescreen computer monitor, or depending on the device. If it's a phone they're trying to read on, it'd be very small. But most people realize that when you compare the good with the bad, that it's definitely worth it. But some people found it difficult to read and maybe a little harder to navigate. I would guess that that's tied to the type of device they're using, but we did not ask a question. If I could go back, like I always say after I do a survey, if I could go back and ask a question, I might ask them what kind of device they use to read on. That would be interesting to know. So what about actual student performance? How did the students do in the courses where the OER was assigned versus the course sections where it was not assigned? So as I said, we have sort of a quasi-experimental design we were able to make some comparisons with. And this was one of the most important findings in the entire project, I would say. So this is just a simple analysis of variance, ANOVA. We're comparing the means by race and ethnicity. So in terms of DEISJ considerations, we saw that students of color, particularly Black, African American, and Hispanic or Latino or Latina students, saw quite a bit of improvements in their performance in the class, not their perceptions. This is their actual grades that they got in the courses were markedly improved when the OER book was offered. And we think that is purely a function of access to a free textbook. People not having to make choices. Should I buy the text or should I buy the groceries? A lot of times minority students at SUNY Oneonta are coming from underprivileged parts of New York City and so forth. And economic hardship is a reality that a lot of students have to deal with, but particularly racial and ethnic minority groups, as we know from other types of research that we've done. So when we see all racial and ethnic groups experienced a benefit. We did have one Native American student, but there wasn't a comparison point, so they weren't included here in the analysis. But Asian students averaged the highest grades in the intro social course, but even with the high grades, the OER book provided a slight benefit, which might speak to the quality of the book as much as the access issue. Hard to say exactly what the difference is attributed to. But for Black or African Americans, a full 2.2 grade increase And of course, we have to realize this is a small sample analysis. We don't want to go too far in our generalizations. This definitely needs to be replicated and repeated. But I'm not sure we'll have the opportunity here since we've gone to full scale adoption. But if somebody else is considering an adoption and you're going to have a transition stage where you have some course sections that have it, some that don't, it's a great opportunity to replicate this and see if you find the same thing. Are the students in the OER sections actually doing better when it comes to their grades? And particularly pay attention to racial and ethnic minority groups. Full grade better for Hispanic or Latino students. Two or more, very similar, not significant, but very similar. Same with white students, but slight increases. And then overall, about a half a grade improvements, from an average of 1.97 to 2.34 between the non and the yes OER course sections. So if you're looking for hard data, there it is. We definitely understand the criticism one might have, the critique that comes with a small sample like this, non-representative, but we have 140 students from which we're looking here, but we're looking across several groups. But as you can imagine, if we were to combine groups, we'd find similar and somewhat generalizable results. So the other indicator of student performance is whether or not they stayed in the class or they withdrew. And so what was the rate of withdrawal? And students don't usually withdraw from courses in general, but what we saw was students in the OER sections, you can see 100% did not withdraw here, 97.6 did not withdraw, 100% did not withdraw. That doesn't mean that the non-OER necessarily had higher rates of withdrawal. Like this section, nobody withdrew. It was a non-OER section. But here, 90% finished the course. So 10% almost withdrew from that section, which is an alarmingly high number. 9%, 9.7% withdrew from the non-OER section, and about 3% here. So a little more variability at least. So maybe minor evidence here that withdrawal rates are improved by adopting OER text. So the upshot, the recommendations, OER, great free alternative to traditional textbooks. Don't have to be online, they can be physical copies, but even then they tend to be very cheap, maybe $10 instead of $100, saving students a lot of money, which is a huge piece of the puzzle, making college more accessible and access to college more equitable as well. So concerns about quality, which is one of the main objections, even some of us were a little leery about potential quality issues, but we were satisfied with the OpenStax candidate. So, do your own research if you're thinking of adopting OER, but if you're teaching sociology, we definitely recommend third edition OpenStax. Students perform better generally in the OER section when it came to grades, as we just saw. Their perceptions were overwhelmingly positive, as we saw from the survey data. We haven't collected the faculty feedback yet, but preliminary results suggest very positive responses to the OER text. And, all the concerns about the online formats, again, mentioned, can assign the print version. But the thing we liked most was this last one, which is contingent. At least it's easier in the online setting to rearrange the topics. And by embedding the readings directly into the shelves, you're ensuring that they're reading in the order that you want them to in a very linear fashion. You can actually generate a modified print version that goes in the order you like. So it is something else to consider if you're not aware of that being a choice. They will allow you to modify the chapters, the order of the chapters, the order of the readings, and then insert your own reading text as well if you'd like to write portions of the chapters. So you can't do any of that with traditional text. Great. Textbook details, if you want to get to that OER book I've been talking about, you should be able to access it through that QR code. I think that will do it. And this is the screenshot of the website where the book lives. I believe that takes us to the end. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Looks like we don't have time for questions, but I'm sure if anybody does have any questions, you can feel free to email. And yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. I will stop the recording now.
Thank you very much.